Welcome into the Kings Beat podcast. I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We are, of course, a Blue Wire podcast brought to you by Underdog Fantasy Sports. What's going on, everybody? It's a little crazy. It's been wild. It's raining. We've got all kinds of things going wrong, like James forgetting to get out of the YouTube page. But let's get this thing started. We are, of course, joined by Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I'm okay. You had me nervous there. It seems like there was like a stall, a long pause, had me all nervous. I was like, did we do something wrong?
I got distracted by the video playing in my ears again.
Okay.
And of course, Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast is also joining us today. Brenden, how are you?
Hello. Doing well. Dealing with what feels like a never-ending sickness, but feel fine. Just messes with the voice every once in a while, so forgive me.
What are your symptoms there? Just no voice?
It's lethargic? Just a cough that has lingered for way longer than the actual 3-4 days of really being sick. But it's no big deal. I'm not here to complain.
Talk to Dr. Sean. Sean's got the recipe for you.
Let's get on the couch here. I think it comes with wearing a red A's hat first and foremost.
I knew you guys.
It's his River Cats colored A's hat now. Thank you.
Maroon, is that
what I was going for?
Scarlet?
Yeah.
Long COVID. Boombox Benny in the chat. Long COVID. Maybe.
No.
No.
Took my tests. Nope. Don't think so. Yeah.
No,
you be around people tomorrow. We got some press conferences.
We do have some press conferences tomorrow.
Bright and early.
What's going on, everybody? We are, of course, the Kings Beat podcast. If you're here watching live and you don't mind, and give us a thumbs up, make sure to subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. We've got a ton of stuff to talk about. First up, do you guys have your podcast candles? What's going on here?
No, I don't have.
I do kind of have one lit over here.
Sean, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed.
This actually just went out. It was going this watermelon lemonade. We can get it going again here.
Watermelon lemonade? That sounds good.
Yeah.
Huh.
I had promised I would have one the next time we did it, and
you're a liar.
I don't know. I lied.
We wish you weren't a liar, Sean.
Hey, let's play a fun game real quick. Hey, Brenden, do you know who this is?
Let's play Brenden Knows. How about that? Brenden Knows.
Like we didn't already find out that I don't know who this is before we recorded. No, I have no idea.
I thought you were gonna Google.
What am I gonna Google?
I don't know. Athlete wearing shoulder pads and holding a bat.
Why
don't you do that and see what pops up?
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Iconic
what would I
man
Google?
Holding baseball bat over his shoulders while wearing shoulder pads. Come on, Brenden, you can do it. Like even an AI search on Google. Okay, so who is it? Bo Jackson.
Let's go. We got.
That's why we played Brenden Knows.
Yeah,
because Bo knows. Adrian Sanchez, what is going on? You can't just throw that in the chat. That is not OJ Simpson.
Doc,
Come on now.
Still in the Hall of Fame? Question mark. Is he still in the Hall of Fame?
That's a good question. They didn't remove him from the Hall of Fame. Okay, so let's dive into this.
We have to start. Do we?
Do we have to start? We're at 3 minutes and 45 seconds.
Should we wait a little longer? Well, I have things. I mean, I could come up with things to talk about.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah,
Grammys.
Well,
absolutely. See, now you're just getting a sidetrack.
Come on.
People love it.
Did you watch? Did either of you watch? First of all,
no, not really.
I watched a couple of minutes here and there. Yeah. Well, I mean, we had other things going on, didn't we, on Sunday?
Did we? Well, yes. My night was kind of ruined. But I did. I had it DVR'd or whatever works these days, and I went back and was able to watch a lot of it. I kind of watched in the middle of the night just because I saw a lot of it live as it happened. But
okay.
Yeah, Kendrick Lamar sweeping the Grammys. Beyonce getting a album of the year finally.
Mm-hmm.
Long overdue.
I did see that.
What was of all the performers, what was your favorite performance?
I didn't watch closely enough for that.
Okay, of what you saw then.
I thought the Chapel Roan one was really good. The whole crowd was into it.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
You're just baiting him.
I saw that one.
What do you mean?
Don't believe Brenden watched it.
I did. I actually just saw it like half an hour ago.
You're like, Rihanna, Chapel Road. Which one should I bait Sean with? I'll get him with one of these. Amazing, crazy Sunday.
Moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is today? Is today Tuesday? Today's Tuesday. We've lost all track of days and everything else. I got to be honest, it's been a whirlwind. And really a whirlwind started like a week ago, maybe plus. The Sacramento Kings have traded their franchise player. De'Aaron Fox is no longer the face of the franchise. He is now a member of the San Antonio Spurs. Kevin Huerter was also sent out, and so was Jordan McLaughlin. McLaughlin heads to the Spurs. Kevin Huerter goes to the Chicago Bulls. Sacramento Kings have acquired CD Sissoko as the centerpiece of a major trade that also includes Zach LaVine. LaVine.
I think you did that to see if I was paying attention.
There it is. Zach LaVine is now your starting shooting guard of the Sacramento Kings. And there's like chaos. The Kings picked up a trade exception. They picked up a 2027 first round pick that's unprotected from San Antonio Spurs, a 2031 first round pick that's from the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's also unprotected. They picked up a 2025 first round pick from the Charlotte Hornets. That pick will not be a first round pick. It will be 2 second round picks, a 2026 and a 2027, I believe. And then the Kings picked up 3 additional second round picks in the transaction. What are your thoughts? Let's start with Brenden Nunes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I fundamentally don't love the decision to try to remain competitive while trading away your best player, but understanding that that was the direction they were trying to go, I don't think it's absolutely horrible. I for sure would have thought that the draft capital would have been better. There's those Atlanta picks that obviously stand out as the key highlight here of San Antonio's assets, the 2031 swap that was part of the DeRozan sign-and trade that I thought Sacramento maybe would have been able to get back in this. So I certainly thought they would have gotten more, but I think the context of, De'Aaron, all signs pointing towards him wanting out, if not this by the deadline. I think this offseason, that was sort of the expectation, and him having a very specific destination in mind, which makes conversations a little complicated with other teams. Obviously, they're not going to offer that much if they're unsure on his future and if he'd be willing to extend with that team. So I think now you have a whole lot more draft capital to work with. It frees up some of your other first rounders from Stepien rules and things like that. A bunch of second rounders. You're up to 6 now if we include those 2 Charlotte ones from the first as just essentially being second rounders after having 1 before. So you have more flexibility, and I feel like it has to be a little TBD until we see what else happens before Thursday. But I would have wished the draft capital would have been a little bit better, but I think that's kind of the nature of when you're trying to also get a now competitive player in this deal.
Sean?
It felt like it was necessary. It felt like as the weeks and days drew closer to the deadline, this was just mounting and mounting and mounting and mounting, and it was just honestly, guys, it was getting ugly. That you don't have to look much further than obviously how these guys were competing on the road. I'm of the opinion that that this had they not made a move, I think things would have been awkward. I don't think that they would have festered, and I know there's plenty of people that would disagree with me, but I think if you didn't make that move, and maybe you make some other moves around Fox, at least to finish out this year and see what it looks like, because as we've seen, a lot that can change very, very quickly, as I always say, and the landscape certainly has. We haven't mentioned the Luka thing yet, and that trade, but the NBA landscape is just wild, and so I'm not of the opinion that it would have festered all the way to the end of the year, and this thing would have just been this toxic wasteland of something that the season would have totally given up on. I think, especially if you look at how the All-Star break will play out, I think you could have had some conversations. You could have gotten away, had a little bit of a reset, plenty of practice time, and who knows? They had played well under Doug Christie since he took that over. Some people might have called that fool's gold. Who knows? But I think there is a competitiveness. But I think this was hanging over the franchise in a very negative way. You might have been able to get beyond it, see what happens, get to the offseason. I don't think you would have gotten necessarily less. I mean, certainly there's a desire for the Kings to land Zach LaVine. I mean, we've talked about that ad nauseum over the past few years. This is somebody they've had their eye on for a long time. And if you look at it just from a analytical standpoint, statistically standpoint, I mean, scoring is there. You're not losing much if you're not losing really anything when it comes to scoring. This is a guy who can take a lot of shots as long as he's healthy, and he's having an absolutely stellar, magnificent season. It hasn't really gone in the way of winning, but him and DeRozan had been all-stars together. Their first year they played with each other, and I think there's interesting things that are still going to happen as the deadline on Thursday nears. I'm expecting 2 moves that this team will make, and I long-winded way, I don't think we're ever truly going to know the truth of what signified the moment that Sacramento wanted to deal De'Aaron Fox, when that moment for De'Aaron Fox was, if he truly wanted to stay or go, or if he was just flirting with, money and obviously passing up on the extension for possibly going for the super max if he was able to get that, and then having the expectation that max contract stay in there. Certainly what he's put out on social media flies in the face of a lot of things I've heard, and probably you guys have as well. I mean, they really have they really have set themselves up to where they knew where they wanted to go. In terms of De'Aaron Fox, where they'd be willing to extend to, and now that they're there, I think it's gonna be stellar for them. As for Sacramento, I still feel much like Brenden that. Look, I'm going to be the first to admit, if I was a GM, I'd be an awful one. So it's easy for me to sit here and say you should have gotten more, you could have gotten more. I feel like San Antonio, for a team that had their future pretty well mapped out, looked at Sacramento and said, no, fuck you. Like, if you're trading him to us, this is what you got. You don't get your pick swap back. You don't get Devin Vassell or Jeremy Sohan or anything like that. No, we're not in a position where we have to make the move. You are. And so that could have changed things maybe if you get into the summer. I'm not so sure there. So from that standpoint, ultimately the Kings got what they want. Some fans may feel differently. You got more first round picks than the Mavs got for Luka, which is kind of this interesting dynamic. I mean, I will argue that they don't carry a lot of weight, but your cupboards are now not filled, but you have things in them in terms of draft capital, and it'll be interesting to see what the moves that trickle over into it. But I will say this, whether I agree with how they did it or whatever, it did feel entirely necessary to move on from De'Aaron Fox and their decision to try to remain competitive. I'm with you, Brenden. I don't know that I truly believe that I would do that. But I don't think, if this thing goes colossally wrong, right? If this thing just like gets to a point where, oh man, we made a wrong decision, a year from now, you can still do that. Like, I don't think you're going to be that far removed to where you totally have to worry about not hitting the reset button quick enough. But if they can remain competitive, and certainly this fan base, in my opinion, wants that. I don't think this fan base will stomach a hard reset. So I commend them. Kudos for them to see this thing through. Let's see what happens in these next few days.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm of the opinion it's sort of a mix here, right? I think the situation had become like very, very tense. I think we saw the team just lay down on Saturday, and that was like a moment where, first of all, most of the players had started. The deal was close then coming into that day. To be honest with you, I was shocked he even played. Like totally shocked that he played against OKC. Everything had heated up that morning again. The next day is, Saturdays when they trade him. But you could just see that was sort of like the players weren't 100% engaged, and it was unfortunate to watch. So I agree. At the end of the day, we got to a point where you had to trade him. I also agree with Brenden that I mean, I think you got pennies on the dollar when it comes to like what you got in draft capital. The fact that, like what Sean said, you didn't get a Sohan, you didn't get a Castle, you didn't get you. I mean, to be honest, you didn't even get a Champagne in the
You weren't
deal.
getting Castle. There's no way you're getting Castle.
Yeah, well, that can be debated, but either way, like you couldn't even get a Julian Champagne in the deal, and that to me is where it kind of became like this. Like, what are you doing? Like I said in the opening, it's not 3 first-round picks like they're pitching it. You can say this year's pick is a 2025 Charlotte Hornets first-round pick, but it's top 14 protected, and they have 12 wins. They're 12-34 or something like that, maybe 12-35. So just the draft capital alone, you allowed a team in your own conference to take your best player. You did not get the best player. You lost the best player in the deal, and you got some okay draft capital. You got a bunch of second-round picks which this front office has proven time and time again they squander and they don't value. But the fact that they got to a point where they didn't have any to make basic trades, that was a bit of an issue. My biggest issue overall is this. Again, we'll kind of set the Zach LaVine thing to the side for a second because I do like Zach LaVine as an offensive weapon, and I do think he will fit really, really well as an offensive player alongside Domantas Sabonis and Malik Monk and DeMar DeRozan, and if he makes it through the deadline, and of course Keegan Murray. My biggest issue is that, like, the Kings are the ones who created an atmosphere where this was going to happen. Like this became untenable because of their inactivity, and it started, last trade deadline. It started the last offseason. This entire offseason here, they went through and really didn't go out and try to improve the team all that much. They traded basically Harrison Barnes for DeMar DeRozan. They swapped those players out. And you could see this team was broken midway through the season. They already fired a coach, and just these little barbs that we've had. Even Chris Biederman sitting down with De'Aaron Fox last week when things were really starting to spin out and go sideways. And I mean, he was clear with Biederman that, like, not having press conferences and leaving players out there to sort of answer the questions for the front office didn't feel good. And De'Aaron Fox wasn't happy with the fact that he felt like he was thrown under the bus. And like there just feels like an accumulation of things that were so avoidable that you basically lost your franchise player because you were ineffective at your job. And the fact that you traded him at the end of the day, um, whatever you got is what you got, but it never had to get to that point. And that's where I'll be with this thing for a long time. That just, like, this was avoidable. And people can say, well, he wanted a supermax, or if he wasn't going to sign his extension, it's like he wasn't going to sign his extension because he wasn't guaranteed, because he wasn't sure that this team was going to be good. And then you got to 30 games into the season and the team wasn't good, and you'd already got to a point where you're firing your coach and everything else. So this thing spun out of control pretty quickly, and this is where we are today. So let's start with the Zach LaVine angle. Again, we can talk about CD Sissoko if we want. I was being, just being.
I think Sean would love to.
To talk
about CD Sissoko.
Yeah, that's what we're here for, right? For the Stockton appearances this year.
We're here for that. I did, those. But just to touch base on them really quick, because I brought it up like an idiot. I did reach out to Pete Youngman, our friend. And Pete Youngman, of course, was the trainer for the G League Ignite, where CD Sissoko played basically the equivalent of his college basketball. And this is what Pete said. He said, "Salt of the earth, a pleasure to work with, eager and willing to work to keep improving his game. Like a lot of guys, he just needs an opportunity." And so, again, like a good kid. There's a lot of weirdness about his his size and like his height and weight. I went to the actual San Antonio Spurs media guide to get his actual height and weight, and he's 6'6", 220. So I don't know why Basketball Reference has him at 6'8", 200 pounds. But he came into the league at 6'5.5" at the combine, and like 226 pounds. So he's not a gigantic small forward / power forward. He's more of a 2-3 than he is anything else. Anyway, I think that's all we really need to talk about CD Sissoko, right?
Yeah, I mean, what, a late first round pick a couple years ago, kid's 20 years old.
No, he fell to the 44th pick.
44th, excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not even whatever. It's just it's a piece that whatever, you might get an opportunity in the G League, you might be able to make some development strides, but ultimately it's not really a win now, help now type of player.
Yeah. Brenden?
Yeah, for sure. A guy that had upside projection is like a late first rounder at the time of the draft, ended up falling. I think there's interesting tools there for sure. It's just about kind of fine tuning everything. And I'd imagine that he'll get reps in Stockton in order to be able to do that. And the ideal version of him long term is a guy like a role player that could help this team, but certainly not counting on that. More so just something to, keep tabs on, see how he does in Stockton and continues to develop.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, you need players like this, whether he makes it, deep past the trade deadline or, to the summer. Like, we have no idea. The Kings now, their roster stands at 13 players. They will not address the 13th and 14th and 15th roster spot until we get past the trade deadline, which of course is Thursday at noon Pacific time. So we're gonna have to wait and see. Like I assume, like once the dust settles, there's a good chance that Isaac Jones will get signed to the rest of the year for to a regular contract, just because he's running out of two-way days and the ability to play with the main team. I think last time I looked, he was at 38 or 39, and he can only play 50 games with the main club. So that's going to be an issue that we'll see like clear itself up here in the next couple of days or maybe the next week or two. But let's get to the LaVine conversation. I know a lot of people out there, like, because all I do is talk about this on the radio. Like their instant reaction is that I hate Zach LaVine. I don't hate Zach LaVine as a player. I think he's
much like you hate De'Aaron Fox, or excuse me, like DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah. I think that he's a very, very gifted offensive player, and he can pass and he can rebound. He's a much more efficient scorer than De'Aaron Fox. She's 51.1% from the field, 44.6% from three. He's just a much more efficient offensive player, more of an off-ball player than Fox is, like a slightly lower usage player than Fox. But still, like, there are some red flags with him as well. He makes $43 million this year. He makes $46 million next year. He has a player option for $49 million the year after that. That's one of my concerns. My other concern, he's not a great defender. And my third concern is that he tore his ACL like back in 2018, 17, 18. And then he underwent foot surgery last year and played 23 games. He does have a long history of injuries. And so those are I will start the conversation since I have been slightly negative about this transaction in other places. And then I'll just throw it to you guys. Again, I don't hate Zach LaVine. And if you are going to try to continue to win games, he's a guy that will take the pressure off of Malik Monk. And that's one thing that I saw right away. As soon as you pulled De'Aaron Fox off the floor against Oklahoma City Thunder, they sent every great defender that they have at Malik Monk, and he turned the ball over a whole bunch of times. And it just became a lot more difficult. If you don't have that second or third, star scorer, you're going to have problems. So that's where I'm at. But let's go ahead and start with Sean. Sean, what do you got?
Are you talking about on Zach
LaVine? Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I think you mentioned the injuries, and certainly there have been many. He's missed time. When he tore his ACL, it's a really an interesting kind of look into him as an athlete, because he tears his ACL and then becomes a two-time All-Star. Then experiences his only playoff experience. Then becomes a gold medalist in the Olympics, part of Team USA. So I hear you on a lot of those things, and I think they're legit concerns. But I think the ACL is very, very past him, much past him in the rear view. I think he's still ultra athletic. He still has a lot of lateral quickness. He can still jump out of the gym, and he's still a bucket. And to me, one of the things that I noticed about him, especially this year, and it really happened about a week before they played their first game against the Kings is just how efficient that he's been. I mean, this year is I mean, especially, I mean, this is definitely a career year for him. But if you look at even over the course of majority of the time, like, he's a chucker, but he's an efficient chucker, if that makes sense. Like, he's capable of taking a ton of shots, but it's not like he's going to go 10 for 33. This is a guy who really has found a way to be ultra efficient within offensive systems. And I think what's interesting too, I mean, you put DeRozan aside, like, him playing with DeRozan, yeah, that's all well and good. The past couple of years, it didn't really work, obviously, because of injuries and just, whatever thing you want to blame it on. But him playing with Vucevic, I think, gives him a glimpse into what it'll be like to play with a better version of that with Domas. But once again, Zach LaVine is fine. The roster has such imbalance, and that's something that they're going to be really focused on here over these next 2 days before the deadline on Thursday. So I don't really have concerns terribly about LaVine. I think it's for one thing, you can look at the contract and say it is what it is, but it feels like there's some stability there. You don't have a star player, when, like it or not, he is a star player on this team, and he's under contract. It may be a lot of money, but like, him and Domas are wrapped up. And I think that kind of gives some comfortability with this organization as they step forward. You don't have anything hanging over them in terms of somebody who doesn't want to be here or has to, show that they might have a 1 foot out the door. And I think that's important as they go forward. And I'll say this, putting LaVine aside, I think the one thing that needs to be mentioned is the fact that even though it's a small sample size, guys, I think this team really took a lot out of those games that they played without De'Aaron Fox and found some of their best moments of the season as a glimpse. And if you look at, obviously, last night in Minnesota, that was an inspired effort. I mean, that was a moment where, I know Doug Christie had kicked out he had a message after the Oklahoma City game, took his assistants out of didn't even let them in the locker room, and had his own message privately to the players to talk to. I don't know what was said necessarily, but it was a very forward message that Doug, he's full of optimism, but the one thing that guy just will not stand for, and we all know Doug, he calls out guys that just are not playing hard, and he doesn't do it publicly, and he does it in a smart way. And I think that's probably what the message was there. But I think the way they came out, it felt like a pressure off of their shoulders, and they played really inspired basketball against Minnesota. Guys, they could have lost that game, and I still would have been saying the same thing. I felt that effort that they had in Minnesota was exactly what was the right recipe to come off of that 6-game road trip. You salvage a 2-4 trip. You're still a game over 500. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I thought that they played inspired basketball after moving on from Mike Brown too. I think sometimes these sort of moments can kind of jolt a team a little bit, and they can also make teams, crumble. So it's credit to them to sort of remain together and effective, at least to an extent, throughout all this. And we'll see if that remains with LaVine. But I think, like you guys mentioned, offensively, it's easy to see how this works, and the Kings are already 7th in offense. But I think the biggest way he helps there is the 3-point shooting. You mentioned 44%. He's doing that both off the dribble and off catch and shoot. 44% off the dribble is pretty ridiculous for him, and on good volume, obviously. But the Kings this year, 24th in 3-point percentage, 20th in attempts, about 36 a game. They want to get to 40. That number might get higher even with LaVine replacing De'Aaron here. And I think he still gets to the rim fairly well, finishes well when he gets there. And one of the most intriguing aspects to me is I feel like Domas's best skill is making other players around him better. And I don't think that LaVine's had a guy like that to sort of enable his game. Vucevic for sure, but I do think, like Sean mentioned, Domas is kind of on another level there. But you still have the same weaknesses that you had on this team. Outside of, like I mentioned, LaVine maybe helping your 3-point shooting, you still are lacking the wings or forwards that haven't been on this roster for a long time now. And defensively, I thought that was maybe the most encouraging stretch in those, what was it, 11 of 15 after Doug took over there, where their defense looked really solid. And during this road trip, multiple instances of giving up 140 plus. I don't think LaVine is helping you there. Hence why, I think there's an expectation that more things get done before Thursday. But I think it's easy to see how this team can still remain fun and be able to put up a decent amount of points on a night-to-night basis. It's more of the postseason execution that I worry about, swapping De'Aaron for LaVine here. But, I think that they're still going to be a fun team that's right in the same race that they were already in my mind.
Okay, so I'm like the bump that they got from like the Mike Brown firing. Like I looked this up and I remembered it this way, but I made sure that I remembered it correctly. The game after the Kings traded DeMarcus Cousins, they beat the Denver Nuggets, who are a good team. They were up and coming at that point, and it was like that moment where everybody felt like this relief, like, oh my gosh, like there is life after DeMarcus Cousins, right? I kind of felt like that was the same exact thing that we saw yesterday from the team. It was just like this moment of, okay, look, we are still a talented group of dudes. We can go out and win games. And yeah, De'Aaron's not here anymore, but we are getting some reinforcements and there is some positivity here. I would also tell you, well, just warn you that the Kings went on to lose 8 straight after the DeMarcus Cousins, after that win against the Nuggets. So there's that. There's always this moment where you can say, okay, we got through that first game. We got that one win under our belt. Now what do we look like the rest of the season? And, we're going to take some adjustment time. And this is not going to be a smooth transition and all that stuff. I don't know what at all to expect from the Sacramento Kings tomorrow night. I don't know who's still going to be there by tomorrow night because I, like Sean, like there are all kinds of crazy murmurs going around right now about who may or may not be with this team in the coming days. And so like, I think it's going to get really interesting. The one key that I think, Brenden, you brought up there is like Zach LaVine is not a good defensive player. And like people think I'm being a jerk about it or whatever. Like he's not known for his defense. That's just like the way he's been throughout his career. As he's gotten older as a player and some of the players around him are better defensive players, he has gotten like at least league average. But the problem that De'Aaron Fox had, Zach LaVine still has. It's probably magnified more with LaVine instead of Fox in the backcourt. And that's that you do not have any length or athleticism at the 3 and the 4. And you have to address that between now and Thursday, or we're going to see a similar thing where it's like, hey, this team can put up 135 and they can give up 140. And it's going to be an interesting thing to see how it all works out. But like, look, this is it, you typically don't trade your number one player in the middle of a season, and then all of a sudden it's like raining like superstar players getting traded. And I'm not putting De'Aaron Fox in superstar status, but certainly the Luka trade, we're hearing rumors now of Kevin Durant possibly getting traded. That actually popped up weirdly on Saturday with a bunch of like weird stuff with the Kings and potentially chasing Kevin Durant, which was like, okay, that's weird. And the fallback may have been LaVine. So that was at least in a weird conversation that came my way. And I'm sure Sean probably heard some of that as well. But at the end of the day, like, look, I'm ready to go watch more basketball that's different basketball than what we've watched before. We have to digest trades. We have to give analysis. If you don't like that I'm sort of down on the transaction, that's okay. Like people out there, go and get your Zach LaVine jerseys. That's totally fine. I just like, I've watched enough basketball. He's an 11-year vet. There's enough of a sample size to know who he is as a player. And, and he's also a player that the Kings tried to get like 5 times. They signed him to an offer sheet, a 5-year, $80 million, 4-year, $80 million offer sheet. It was
matched in minutes.
It was matched in minutes. And hey, he wasn't exactly excited about the opportunity of going to Sacramento. He was excited about getting his money in Chicago. And then just like, this is a contract that, in all honesty, behind the scenes, I've been told multiple times over the last couple of years that Vivek really likes him as a player and wanted him as a player. We saw even last season at the beginning of the year, like all kinds of reports that Zach LaVine wanted to come to Sacramento to partner with De'Aaron Fox. Like that was a thing for a couple of weeks. But at the end of the day, management kept saying no, and they didn't say no this time. And, again, there's a lot of reasons for that, but that's kind of where we're at.
I will say this too. I mean, this notion that whether you like the trade, don't like the trade, you wanted to keep De'Aaron Fox, like that's part of being a fan, man. Like you feel however you want, right? Like you can go out there. It doesn't make any of us right. None of us, we're not telling you how to feel. Keep an open mind. Like to me, it's Zach LaVine's here. I think you're going to remain a Kings fan. Like I don't think anyone's burning their jerseys. I could be wrong. I don't think the Kings are going to do what the Mavericks are doing and offer refunds for their season ticket holders. But yeah, man, I feel like people understand what it is here, and I feel like Zach LaVine will get a warm Sacramento ovation. I don't think anyone's going to boo the guy.
Oh no, I think they're going to be excited. Yeah.
So
it's going to be easy for him to be a fan favorite. I mean, that guy has highlight plays. He's a bucket. He can score in a wide variety of ways, make tough shots, and like you mentioned, be efficient throughout it. James, I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, what's your understanding on how difficult it would be just with matching salaries at this point? Because Kevin Huerter, talking potential trades as Thursday approaches here, because Kevin Huerter obviously also goes out in this deal to Chicago. That was the big matching salary assumed in a lot of these deals, with Trey Lyles mentioned in there as well. But you have 4 big salaries of LaVine's 44, Domas is 40, DeMar 33, 17 for Malik, and then you get to 2 $8 million deals, Keegan Murray, Trey Lyles. You assume Keegan's not involved in things. And you got like $4 million for Devin, and then a handful of $2 million deals, and TPEs that people love to point out that you can't aggregate with other players, just so everybody knows. But also the aspect of wanting to stay below the tax line here. Like, in your mind, how difficult is it to maneuver from this point?
Yeah, this is it's really complicated, right? So the Kings have right now they're 10.5 million under the luxury tax, which is they actually save some money in this transaction. They were roughly 3 million under the luxury tax. Now they're 10.5. But they also took on some additional weird like incentive money in this transaction. So they're only 14 million below the hard cap, which is the first apron. So they can't take back more than 14 million more than goes out at this point, right? So what they can't do, just so people know, is they can't go out and find another player at $16.8 million, which is their traded player exception for Kevin Huerter, and just pick that player up, because that transaction would push them over the hard cap, and they can't do that, if that makes sense. They're 14 million under the hard cap. That's 16.8 million. They can't do it. So yeah, the rules with traded player exceptions, and the Kings have a bunch of them. They've got 4.7 from McDaniel, the McDaniels trade. They've got 5.9, I think, from the Chris Duarte trade. They've got a 6.7 or $6.8 million TPE from Sasha Vezenkov to trade. They still have their mid-level exception at 12.8, and then they have this new one that they created 16.8 million. The problem is you cannot add those together, and you cannot add players to them to make them bigger. So again, if you're going to chase Cam Johnson, you can't trade a $16.8 million Kevin Huerter salary and Trey Lyles to get within range of Cam Johnson's salary. So that's kind of the way they work. So they can't be aggregated with player salaries, but there is a way around this. And so people know what you can do is you can trade a player to a different team, create another and create you can trade a trade a player exception, a TPE, to another team, and have that player in a 3-way trade go to the team that you're talking to. So you got me. You can trade for basically a $16.8 million player, but that player doesn't come to your team. He goes to the other team, and then you add other players from your roster to balance the money. So there are ways around this. There is a way that the Kings could get up to, like maybe John Collins status, but that's at $26.5 million. That would be really tough. And you have to have another team that's willing to tango, right? Somebody else is going to want to jump in. Now,
or 3 or 4.
Or 3 or 4. And again, you can do it multiple times. You can trade your $6.8 million TPE from Sasha Vezenkov to another team and have that team trade a player to the Brooklyn Nets, and you trade like another player to the Brooklyn Nets from a different angle. So there are ways to work those things out, but that's where it becomes really difficult. I would say the one advantage the Kings have right now is there are a bunch of teams that are way over the luxury tax who aren't like spectacular and who might look to dump a bunch of salary and might be willing to jump in on one of these trades to not only give you the player that you need to go out, but also the assets that you need to go out and make another trade, if that makes sense. Like if you're going to trade, just like, again, for sake of argument, if you're going to say Pat Connaughton at $9.9 million for the Bucks, if you trade a TPE to get him as part of a deal and he goes to some other team as like basically an expiring contract or whatever his contract is, right? The Bucks in that situation, because they're so far over the luxury tax and over the aprons and over the second apron, that by trading a $10 million salary, they're going to save like $35 million. And so that's where you can get another team to kick in, maybe a first round pick, maybe a first and a second to help you make a trade that would make more sense. So there are like a lot of like loopholes and things that you can do to try to get around these. But it's again, by not having that be part of the main trade, it makes it a lot more complicated. Because as Sean and I discussed earlier, I've said this a million times, a TPE is like a coupon. And on that coupon, it says cannot be combined with any other coupon and cannot go over the price of this coupon. That's all it is. And so basically, it's just part of the old trade. It's just a coupon that extends that trade. Yes, that's what you were kind of looking for, Brenden, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have a lot more draft capital to work with now as well. That 2027 that was kind of locked up because of the Stepien rule with the Atlanta pick being owed and top 12 this year, top 10 next year. You couldn't trade your 2027 first. Now you have a San Antonio first that year as well, so you could move one of those. That Minnesota one is probably the most valuable pick. I think definitely in all of this as well. You have 6 second rounders compared to the one that you had before this. I heard an idea of that they felt like it would be a lot easier to do these other moves after they did the Fox trade, assumedly because now you have so much more optionality when it comes to different caliber of assets too. You saw how Phoenix traded one of their what's likely to be a pretty valuable future first round pick for 3 lesser firsts. I think Kings got assets in that sort of range to make some fringe moves and try to improve this and balance it a little bit before Thursday.
Yeah, I don't hate the Spurs pick either. Like, we think the Spurs will be better 2 years from now, but there's no guarantee that they're going to be like a superstar team. Now they could. And the problem that again, one of the issues about not getting a bunch of assets from the Spurs is that you left them with a 2025 and a 2027 Atlanta Hawks first round pick that could be, like in the top 5. Like it could be a really, really good pick this year, especially with Jalen Johnson going out for the season. They can go make more trades. They still have a ton of assets that you did not take from them that they can go, they have salary matching and whether it's, Keldon Johnson or, if they want to move off of Sohan or one of those deals, they have players and they have assets to go make more moves and probably even more players and more assets than you as the Kings have to make some of those moves. But either way, I think we're in for a wild couple of days, right? Sean, you mentioned earlier, you think they're going to make 2 moves. And that's because you're hearing that they've got some things going, or are you just speculating that they're going to make 2 moves?
No. I'm pretty confident that there's 2 moves coming. At least one for sure. I think a lot of these have been kind of already set up and just really just waiting on, like we talk about, the landscape can change every single day. So the way this is set, it feels like it could be, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I do feel there's two moves that this team is going to make. But it's not something that, and I think they have to. I think they realize they have to do something. My question is, I don't really feel comfortable in going into total detail, but you look at this draft capital and you talk about guys that they've been connected to in the past, and does their move, now that they do have draft capital in their cupboards, does it change your thought process on whether you should, for example, I'm not talking about obviously the 2025 Charlotte pick, because we all know that becomes second round picks, but does that change your calculus, guys, on some of the guys that you've maybe kicked the tires on that might need first or second round picks, possibly multiple, to acquire them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the couple of guys that are out there that we've heard so many times attached to this Kings team are Cam Johnson and John Collins. We've also, like, the Jonas Valanciunas thing has been hanging out there as well. Although it sounded like there was a possibility of him going to the Suns in a swap for Nurkic earlier today or this evening sometime. I'm not sure how far along that is or what's happening. But look, if you do have some extra picks, like Brenden said, the Kings now have their own 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31 pick. They also have that additional 31 pick. And the reason why I bring up why the Kings have their own picks is because when you get a pick like the Spurs pick, the 2027, you can trade that, or you can trade your own. And the reason, as long as you have a first round pick, the Stepien rule doesn't apply. So again, if the Kings were to lose their 2026 pick, they now have 227, so they can't actually trade one of them, because as long as you have a first round pick, you're okay. The other thing they can do, I know this sounds totally bizarre, but in order to not tie up their own draft picks, they could lottery protect the San Antonio Spurs 2027 pick and make that be like their own pick. So what you could do there is say, like, it's a top 14, top 12, top 10, top 8 protected pick, but it's not your own pick, so it doesn't tie up any of your other capital. Does that make sense?
Right, but there would still have to be conditions of it would eventually turn into some of your other draft capital.
Well, yeah, it would either that, or it can dissolve, or it can turn into a second round pick at some point, or whatever. But you can still do that. You now own their pick, and you can do whatever you want with that pick if you go to trade it. So you can protect it. You can protect it, again, 1 through 10. I think it's interesting that there are unprotected picks floating around here all over the place right now. And if I were the Kings, I would never, ever give up an unprotected pick when you're the Kings. You're a team that can't sign free agents, and those draft picks are always a possibility. I mean, we thought they were going to give up their pick last year, and they didn't. They may not give up their pick this year, and it might go to the 2026 situation, and they may never give up that first round pick. They could miss the playoffs next year, and that, it turns into 2 second round picks. So I think it's interesting. Brenden,
real quick, the two sides to your point with, why it wouldn't be wise for them to give up their own future pick. I think that the other side of that is that's also why those picks are really valuable, and why, kind of why, like you're pointing out, why having that San Antonio pick now frees up your own 2027, because that Kings pick is going to be more valuable than that Spurs pick, assumedly, and those future firsts as well. So, you have a lot you're working with, but obviously got to weigh both sides here, and I guess try to balance a future amid all this.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I know NBA guru Zach keeps saying that the Kings are about to get KJ Martin. It's neither here nor there. I haven't heard that, and I haven't chased that at all. KJ Martin is probably getting traded.
He's going to be traded.
Yeah, they pulled him from the game today and said, "Nope, you're not playing." Right? 6'8".
And by the way, the Philly, you talk about trade exceptions. Philly's like completely desperate to get off money and to get to get down, and he's he's going to be one of those players for sure.
Yeah, he'll be one of those.
By the way, for William, who was asking, is the son of Kenyon Martin, who's actually drafted by Sacramento and traded on draft night, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
A few years back.
Yeah, he's one of the many second-round picks that they didn't choose higher up in the draft that actually turned out pretty decent, and but they had already traded him. So he's 6'6", can jump out of the building, 24 years old. I don't know whether the Kings are chasing him or not. I haven't dug on that at all. But this year he's shooting 61.6% from the field and 38.1% from three. But again, that's in 20 minutes a night, and he's averaging 6.4 points per game.
And I think he's been inactive for like 17 games straight or something like that. It's been quite. If I was looking at the game log earlier, and it was a lot of inactivity.
Yeah, he was inactive for a bunch of games with a foot injury. I don't know if that's actually what the problem is. But yeah, he just hasn't been. He's been inactive completely for a long stretch. So maybe that's one of the players that the Kings are looking at. Maybe it's not. I have no idea. But again, you got to remember that the Kings can use players like that in a larger contract, in a larger deal. And again, where they might be able to get something from a team like Philadelphia to sweeten the pot, because that's going to save them tons of money in the luxury tax, I assume. You guys are both looking at your phones. What do we got going on?
No, you're fine. Brenden and I are just texting each other. I'm giving him shit about the Grammys still. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah, I just got a text. You really didn't know Bo Jackson, WTF?
I mean, do you know who Bo Jackson is?
I do. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't quiz me. Don't quiz me here.
Don't quiz me here, but no
What
of.
sports did he play?
No of. Football. Dallas, I got you. Come on.
No.
Not
Dallas.
Both,
Damn it. I tried to quietly, just sneak that in there. All right, guys. Come on.
Baseball and football.
Baseball.
It wasn't Dallas?
No, he played for the Raiders.
It's the
Thinking
Raiders.
of Deion
My dad would
Sanders.
hate me. You're right.
Yeah, I think they were playing the Bengals, and he was making a run around the end, and a guy grabbed his leg, and he popped his hip out of the socket, and then had a degenerative hip after that.
That's gross.
And had to stop playing. Had to stop playing football. He was incredible for the Royals. So I mean, incredible for at that point. If he played in modern baseball and batted 265 or whatever it was, he would be great. But for the 80s,
he was also the best 90s, video game player ever. Like if you could, oh man, slow roll beat me to it. Yes, Tecmo Bowl, the best video game player that you could use in any video game was Bo Jackson.
Oh yeah, Bo had a 99 agility. There we go. Yeah, that dude was an absolutely incredible athlete. It was Brian Bosworth. He ran over going into the end zone. They were playing Seattle, and he ran for the Raiders. He ran over the Boss.
I remember Bosworth. Good old Brian.
I don't think he'll
you have no idea.
You have no idea. Yeah, went to OU, superstar, and then was horrible in the pros. Well, shoulder injuries and stuff. Okay,
can I point something out too? Just because I've seen it come up so often in the chat.
Yeah.
I know. People looking at, I know Clutch, their representation has a reputation of getting people ultimately out of their situations and into a better one. Again, that's what the agency does. They do what's in the best interest of their client. I just want to remind people, Zach LaVine is also with Clutch. So it's not like, I feel like these, sometimes they get a little bit of dirt all over their face. I mean, they represent a significant portion of the league. So
Brandon Ingram, Clutch guy.
Right.
So, yeah. I mean,
Trey
there's a
Lyles.
lot of, what's that?
Yes.
Trey Lyles.
Oh yeah. Trey Lyles, the Clutch guy. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think Clutch was part of this entire deal, like getting De'Aaron out of Sacramento, but also getting Zach LaVine to a better spot. And that's their job. Their job is to represent their clients and to get them in the best place possible. I don't think when De'Aaron signed with Clutch, it was an instant like, this means that he's leaving and that they're getting him out of Sacramento. I do not believe that at all. I believe what that meant was De'Aaron's getting a shoe deal.
And endorsements. And hey, you've been underutilized in a market where you are incredibly marketable from not only a personality standpoint, but obviously being a top 20 player shoe deals, all that kind of stuff.
Kaiser commercials.
Right. That is exactly what that led to.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they do a good job of putting their guys out there and letting them grow into something bigger. Okay, so what do we think happens here?
Stop.
We keep hearing that the Kings are going to be extremely aggressive.
I mean, just look at the roster. You obviously know, everyone knows what they need. The needs are just plentiful at this point, and you know, I wouldn't. You know, when I say too, I don't know that it's necessarily going to be something you're not going to reach a magnitude, in my opinion, of what Zach LaVine was, but you need help. You need, especially guys, Domantas Sabonis still needs help. And I think I was asked a lot, and I'd love to get your guys' opinion. I was asked a lot over the past 2 days, like what De'Aaron Fox's legacy is in Sacramento. And to me, it's such a weird, I mean, it depends on who you're asking for sure, but it feels so incomplete because certainly it's a guy who, you know, played 8 seasons here and been here a long time and wanted to be here in the initial part of it. We all know, you know, embraced Sacramento, embraced wanting to represent this organization and this culture and this city and getting and snapping the playoff drought. But he was also part of a lot of bad teams, and he's only been part of one playoff team, you know, couple play-in scenarios, and you know, couldn't get past game 7 in that Warriors game. You know, obviously that series was incredible, but I feel like you look around, I mean, he's all over, he's littered throughout their record books right now based on really how long he's been here and the type of player he was. But ultimately it just feels incomplete because that team that had made the playoffs, you know, since that game 7 ended, they've needed the same shit. You know, I know, like, DeMar DeRozan was a hell of an acquisition, don't get me wrong. And I still believe that. I still think that could have worked to a degree. Obviously, they got off to a terrible start, slow start. You know, we saw how that ended up, but it's weird to me that what they've needed is something that they still need. And James, you've kind of outlined that when you were talking about LaVine. Like, you're right, LaVine's stepping into a situation where the same things that De'Aaron Fox needed. So I don't know, just getting your guys's you know, kind of perspective on that, because it feels to me like it's a very incomplete legacy.
Brenden?
I mean, can I say one more thing too? Like, and I'm not trying to diminish his all-star candidacy or anything like that, but I have to remind people too, it's like, yeah, you were an all-star, but you're an injury replacement, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. It just feels so incomplete because he had been a part of so many bad teams, young teams that were full of potential, that were just really about developing and trying to play hard and learn the right way to play basketball.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, you know, 4th in the Sacramento era, 4th in games played, 2nd in points, 1st in assists, 1st in steals. He's 4th in made threes. I want to say that he's 1st in made free throws. Like Sean said, his name's going to be all over the record books for Sacramento. I think that original Beam team will hold a special place in a lot of Kings fans' hearts. And Kevin Huerter is a part of that team as well. Saw him acknowledge that and sort of his goodbye to the city as well. So I think you're right. I think it's a weird scenario, and I'm always curious how these sour endings can kind of affect someone's legacy leaving a place. We've seen, you know, that happen in multiple different scenarios and it go in different directions. But I think for the most part that he'll be, you know, a warm welcome from the city for sure. And you wish that there could have been more. I think that De'Aaron also, you know, the same way that you pointed out, like, it's been the same issues since that postseason run. I think that was part of the frustration. And I think that, you know, that can go on both ways. It's not like De'Aaron is a Luka Doncic or one of these top 10 guys that was going to just propel a team totally by himself. And I think that, you know, there's an aspect of understanding that as well. And that's part of him going in a new direction there. But he certainly did a lot for this team. I think that, you know, that, like I said, the main thing that stands out to me is that I think that team that broke the drought will hold a special place. And De'Aaron is a huge part of that, obviously. And I think probably one of the ones that people were closest with, obviously being the longest tenured guy for years. And now that goes to Domas, who hasn't been here for all that long. So I think just the continuity of having been on the team through those tough times and then eventually breaking that drought will, you know, cements him as as special in Sacramento history, but I mean, I definitely don't think we're talking about number in the Raptors or anything like that, obviously.
Yeah, like Sean, it's a good question. Like I think he is going to go down as like during the post, glory years of Sacramento, either the first or second best player from that entire like era, with DeMarcus being there as well. I think his legacy is going to be complicated, like DeMarcus was, but just for totally different reasons. And
100%.
yeah. I mean, I think he's going to be thought of as a really, really, really good Kings player. Like he'll be thought of much higher than like a Kevin Martin, or even going back to the years before, if you like a Walt Williams, or even like a Wayman Tisdale, although Wayman is like universally loved. But still, I mean, I just think that I think maybe my legacy for him is that like the way he left and the way he played in a lot of games, it just always left you wondering if there was just more. You know what I mean? Like, I thought that like during the playoff run, he was incredible, but there were plenty of games where I thought, okay, where is he? Where is he in the first quarter? Where is he, in certain aspects of the game? And so I don't like, I want to say he's a great player, and but he didn't reach that next level, and I don't know why he didn't reach that next level, but we were always waiting for him to hit that next level, and he showed it sometimes, but then not other times. And so again, like I think it is like a slightly complicated. Again, he's the best player of the last 8 years for sure. Maybe even the last 10 years. But there was always just you were hoping that he would have been the guy to lead this team to multiple playoff runs, multiple playoff appearances, and multiple All-Stars, but he never quite hit that next level. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And that's not like, I think I like him as a person and everything else. But yeah.
Look, yeah, and I do too. I mean, look, he's a hell of a player. I saw somebody in the chat compare him to Mitch Richmond. That is blasphemy. Not even close. Mitch Richmond was a 6-time All-Star. He's a Hall of Famer. That ain't it. And he was much like Foxo, a tremendous two-way player, but Mitch Richmond was like the second best two guard in the league behind Jordan at the time. And I'm surprised nobody in the chat really kind of went at that comment there. But like I would even say too, and Brenden, I don't even know how we say this, but at the place that you're employed, can I just say that? You guys had a 40 greatest Kings of all time, and I participated in that. Number one with like a bullet to me, and it's up for debate for sure, but it's no debate who the top two are. It's Mitch Richmond and Chris Webber, and I wonder now, a lot of us participated in that thinking that De'Aaron Fox would be here for years beyond that. And now knowing that certainly he's not here going forward doesn't mean that he can't be going, it doesn't mean he doesn't end up back in Sacramento. Certainly we've seen that happen with plenty of athletes before. But at least in the here and now, this kind of changes the way I look at how that played through, because I believe I had Fox in my top 5.
I think he ended 5th.
He did? Yeah.
Yeah, among all the voters.
Where did you have him?
Honestly, I did not end up doing it because I did not feel like I could.
You worked there.
Well, to be honest, Sean, I didn't feel like it was that I could accurately compare to the previous guys that I didn't watch the same extent as everybody else that was voting. Okay, so honestly, I didn't feel educated enough.
Didn't do the assignment, didn't do the homework.
I think that's super fair. Before we get to the business of basketball, let's jump in on our underdog fantasy stuff. So I've been playing underdog nonstop. I think it's absolutely a cool way to add to your viewing excitement of a game, especially right now when things are going to be really wonky in Sacramento. Like I think it just adds something. Like you want to know, what does Malik Monk look like with points and assists when he's playing with a completely different crew of players. And so if you're out there and you haven't jumped on board with Underdog, go right now, check it out. use the code word KingsBeat. There is a large football game this weekend that there will be all kinds of exciting things that you can sort of play this weekend. So check out Underdog. Again, go to Underdog, download the app, use a promo code KingsBeat. You get a free pick, and you get a first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Also, play responsibly. If you need help, if you're concerned with your play, Leezy, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. You must be 18 to play and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates.
I wish I could take lower on the amount of holding calls that are going to be called on the Chiefs.
Oh, look at Brenden throwing shade. Shade at the Chiefs.
I'm ready for both teams to lose.
Okay, let's get to the business of basketball.
That seems like that's all we've been doing.
It is.
This
kind
is
of
one big business of basketball.
Shut up, you buzzkill.
Yeah, well, okay, you didn't do the sound effects. So
yeah, where's your sound effects?
Anything? No, Sean's not allowed to get on me here.
Both you assholes chiming in. Jesus.
For the guy who said, "Hey, where was Big O?" It was for Sacramento era, so Oscar Robertson was not a part of this.
Yeah, Sacramento era. We have a press conference in the morning, and then we have another press conference, and then we might have another press conference on Friday or Saturday. I don't like this is okay. So people who don't know, we have a press conference at 9:30 with Monty McNair. 2.5 hours later, we have a second press conference with Monty McNair and Zach LaVine. And this is different. We haven't done something like this, but I understand why there's two press conferences. And, we've joked around about it on the air over at ESPN 1320. Mainly just being smart asses about it. Like, the first 5 questions, Zach LaVine's just going to sit there quietly like, hey, what's going on, Zach? How are you? Okay, Monty, why did you fire Mike Brown? So we're going to have 2 split press conferences. And then that second press conference, I think, will be a more of a really conversations about Zach LaVine. Where are you guys at with this? And I know Kings fans are locked and loaded. You guys better ask the tough questions. And they're all amped up and all that stuff. But where are you guys at with what we're going to go through tomorrow when it comes to press conferences?
Well, it's weird as hell. That's for sure. Obviously, you guys have a little more experience with this than I do. But it's like, how relevant is the Mike Brown stuff still? I mean, it factored in a lot it is relevant, I guess, to answering my own question. Obviously, it's a big part of this season. But it's weird to me that they waited so long after the fact to do it more than anything. That obviously it was more timely a couple weeks ago when all of that went down. And I mean, they know as much as what James just said, and that's why we're having these separate press conferences, to avoid that uncomfortableness, I guess, that I think will still exist in that first press conference. But I'm glad they're talking. Hopefully we get another thing later in the week as well, if there's more moves that come down the line. But certainly a lot to ask about. I think it's beneficial to have 2, but more than anything, obviously, I think, like I mentioned, it would have been a lot more timely to do that first one that is only taking place because it didn't earlier, just right after you made the decision to fire Mike Brown, like I think most organizations would. So I'm interested to see how it goes. Personally, on my end, I guess still sort of workshopping exactly what I'm going to ask, but there's definitely a lot of directions to go in.
Yeah, we're I think we're 41 days out of the Mike Brown firing. Go ahead, Sean.
No, I mean, fans deserve to have some transparency as to what the hell is going on with the organization that they support, root for, and invest their money in. I mean, it's not too much to ask. And you can only kick the can so far down the road because there's people like us in the media who will have to still ask those questions, and he can dance around it and he can choose not to answer it. But that's ultimately going to be on him and how he navigates it, or how anyone else in that organization navigates those questions. And I also think it's not just a Mike Brown thing. I don't want anyone to just think of it as a opportunity for him to discuss the Mike Brown. It's also discussing why the hell you traded De'Aaron Fox after you just offered him a max extension, and answer questions about why you're moving off the guy that was the face of your franchise. And you're not doing it by soiling the introduction of Zach LaVine. So I do think it's smart. I think that it's necessary. And I think it's been completely bungled from the moment Mike Brown was fired. So bad on them. Like I said, you can only do it for so long. That's still the general manager who has questions that are needing answers, and he'll navigate it the way he does. Let me just put it this way, the guys, though, like anyone who's expecting fireworks at that press conference, you know better than that. Relax. This guy's a Princeton educated man. He knows how to handle a press conference. He knows you may not be satisfied with the answers, but I don't know what you're expecting in terms of, having popcorn out and ready to go and kicking your feet up ready for some fireworks, because I would just curb that appetite for that, because I just don't see that happening.
Yeah,
love that one.
Yeah, I think that's like the prevailing thought with most of us. First of all, it is like a long distance, between like the initial event. I think that also like the basic questions of why haven't you addressed the basic needs of this team? I think that that's going to be as big a question as anything else, because like, look, you got to a situation where you fired a coach and you traded your best player because both of them were basically asking for the same thing and weren't getting what they needed as a coach and as a player to be successful. And to me, that's going to be one of the bigger issues. It's like, you can make a deal tomorrow, but like the NBA trade deadline is a deadline. You don't have to turn in your paper the day it's due. You can typically turn in a paper a week early, 2 weeks early. You don't have to wait around. And, again, it's like you don't just like run your car until the tires pop. You have to do general maintenance. And this team
What are we
didn't.
talking about?
I'm talking about the team. This team did
analogy,
not do.
I'm like, whose tires popped? What happened?
This team didn't do basic maintenance on their roster. And when you don't do basic maintenance and improve and go out and get more pieces, it becomes stagnant and you lose games. And that's where this thing went. And it's unfortunate, but it cost you a really good coach and it cost you a really, really good player. And that's not to say that Zach LaVine isn't a really good player as well. But you had a 27-year-old star level player that you had team control over at least for another year and a half and potentially for 5 years after that. And now you don't. And, you got older. You took on a player with more injuries, with a few more holes in his game, and who's already making the money that you were going to have to pay De'Aaron Fox. And so, it's I don't want to say it's like a cataclysmic step backwards with what just happened with De'Aaron Fox, but this thing could have, and to be honest with you, should have worked out a totally different way. And a lot of what's happened here was avoidable. At least it looks like it was avoidable from the outside. So I think that it's going to be an interesting day. I also and to be transparent, I don't think he should be the only one sitting up on the stage. And that's neither here
Who
nor
would you
there.
like to see up there, James?
I don't get to make those decisions, Sean, but
you want to see Vivek Ranadive sitting right next to him?
I would like to see Vivek Ranadive and to be honest with you, Wes Wilcox, the assistant general manager. The
assistant general manager should never be part of a press conference. That's not how it works in the NBA. But owners speak all the time.
Yeah,
most owners speak all the time.
Yeah,
there are a select few that do not, and there are reasons for that. But this owner hasn't been heard from in a while, and it would be nice to hear from him.
Yeah. I would like to hear from him too. I don't know that I would feel any better coming out of it than we went in, but I think it's going to be an interesting day, right?
I also think I'll little carrot there. I do feel that you will hear eventually from Vivek Ranadive, but I think I think that happens only really if they choose to go in a different front office direction. Perhaps I could be wrong there. And I'm not saying I know anything. I don't want anyone to look at like I'm dropping little, breadcrumbs or anything. But I do, yeah, like that breadcrumb. I don't think that I think you'll hear from him eventually, but in a press conference setting or something like that, I just don't think that's the move, unless they choose to go in a different direction with the who's going to lead the ship with the organization. So,
yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting day. And to be honest with you, like, look, once the ball goes up in the air, and Zach LaVine is a member of the Sacramento Kings, like, I think the De'Aaron Fox conversation kind of ends. Like, as people who know De'Aaron Fox and cover De'Aaron Fox and have had, hundreds of conversations with the kid, like, I wish him well in San Antonio. Same for Kevin Herter. Same for Jordan McLaughlin. Jordan McLaughlin's a very good dude. And to be honest, so is Kevin Herter. Like you wish those guys well, and this is the NBA game and you kind of move on. But from afar, you'd be crazy to not want to watch and see what happens with De'Aaron Fox. And if he plays like he did here in Sacramento, but he's playing for the Spurs and alongside Victor Wembanyama, I expect him to have all-star bids. I expect him to have a much better, more accolades than he got here in Sacramento. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. Kind of is what it is, right? So I'm ready for the next era, which is partially the Zach LaVine era, along with the rest of this group, and to see what he has and see what this team can do. And I think that's kind of like what tomorrow is kind of like putting a bow on everything in the morning and then transitioning to what's the next era of Kings basketball and what that might look like. Man, you are getting a lot of text messages.
Can you guys hear that?
Is it you two?
No, it's Sean. Dude, you're stressing people out. You're talking about two trades being lined up. Your phone's blowing up. You're stressing out the chat.
You're on a group chat. Aren't you?
No, I mute the group chat. Holy hell, do I mute the group chat?
I can't deal with that.
Y'all know who you are. Yeah, let me not put it here then. I'll put it the Pornhub subscription. My goodness, old E.
Wow.
Yeah, like just going at the guy.
By the way, we should hear from these people in the chat. We have a lot of people here that probably want to talk.
I did ban one guy's just being an ass. So he can he can just kiss my ass and just go. I don't even remember his name, but he can go take off, and he wants to do stuff like that where he's just running amok in the chat. You want to do that at ESPN 1320? I'll just run you there too. So
good luck with that. You are not messing around, James Ham with the ban hammer.
I told you. It's just like this whole thing that we're like glazing De'Aaron Fox. Term? Yeah, there you go. It's just like, hey, like be respectful. Like, we're talking about a guy that we just covered for 8 years and who made an all-star team and who was the best player on the team. Even up until this year, I would say he's the best player on the team. I think Domas has probably surpassed him at this point just this season. But outside of that, like, he's a very, very good player who led your team to the playoffs for the first time in 16 years. Anyway, go ahead, Sean.
I hope we can get to some of these people in the chat. Don't ask if they have any questions. Just highlight some of them, James. But I want to ask you, especially James, because you feel some sort of way, obviously, about this deal. Is there any deal out there that it like a wish list, like if you look at this and go, man, if they got X, Y, or Z, this trade will feel so much better?
Brenden?
I asked him directly, and he goes right to you.
Oh, I didn't know you asked me directly. Look, I think that there are trades that you could do that could make this roster better. I mean, that's like the point the whole time, isn't it?
Sorry, I just mean in terms of to where you're like, oh yeah, I see it.
I think the direction doesn't make sense in the first place from my perspective. Like I said earlier, like I think resetting is the way. So in my mind, I think it's hard for me to not be skeptical that we're getting to the point where we're talking about a team that could seriously compete in even like the second round, So I think for me, it's hard to reach that point in general, assuming that we're not talking about some crazy swing, obviously.
And hold on, just to follow up on that, it doesn't make you feel any sort of way, in terms of having at least Sabonis, LaVine, Monk under, and even, you've got Keegan under control. team control. You got Keon under control, a bargain deal. None of that makes you rethink the hard reset.
No,
I mean, got all those guys under contract for years to come.
I think that the other side of that is that they're valuable pieces if you were trying to reset, that you could get for them. But I think more than anything that it's, you're going to be a fun team. You're going to score like crazy. I think that the offense could be even better with LaVine in place of De'Aaron. But more than anything, like I worry about what this looks like in the postseason. It's the defense. It's still the lack of size and athleticism. And sure, there's some things that could, plug some of those holes. But I still think that comes from your core guys, a core of Malik Monk, Zach, DeMar DeRozan, DeMonis.
Oh, did Brendan freeze?
Did Brendan? We just lost Brendan.
We lost Brendan. That's unusual.
Somebody booted him. I think James got pissed at what Brendan was saying and just banned him from the Kings Beat podcast.
We've lost Brendan.
My new Wi-Fi hate me.
Wait, you're back. You're back.
There he is.
He's back.
Look at
that. Yeah. Okay. So I would say, yeah, like if I'm the Kings, like what would make things different, right? Yeah, I would definitely look at like the Cam Johnson move, like if that could still happen, like that at least makes you feel a little bit better that they've got a guy that can play forward a couple of times. Yeah, hey Quinn, I've had enough, dude. We'll see ya.
Whoa, what are we doing?
Yeah, he just keeps going.
What did he say? No. I see. This is. I don't ban anybody. What did he say?
He wasn't happy that he got put on timeout the first time, and now you're just going nuts. Like if you want to be in the chat, then be respectful. Don't be an asshole. So anyway, yeah, like if that's what you want to do, if you want to come here and be an a-hole, then I'll just like send you packing. Like
I like how you censored yourself on the second one.
The second one, don't be an asshole. That's it. Yeah, like I don't care. Like look, I think like you have to address the holes in the roster just straight up. Like, and like there are ways that you could have done this before. Like again, I think Valanciunas would help this team, but that move by itself isn't enough because it can't really. That's like 12 minutes a night of player. I think like I'm not sure I would do a Cam Johnson move. I mean a John Collins move at this point, but like hey, if you want to do a John Collins move, that's fine. I just would worry that you're accumulating more and more players that other teams were not that have been trying to trade that they've been trying to move off of for a couple of years, multiple players, and I really wouldn't want to be that guy, that team that starts collecting additional players like that. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like a secret. Go like look the Chicago Bulls. There are all kinds of reports that they were offering a first round pick and maybe even 2 first round picks for someone to take Zach LaVine's contract this last offseason.
Reports, James.
Well, yeah, but from reputable
that doesn't
sources.
Mean it's fact. Yeah,
no.
It doesn't. No.
No, I get you. But it's also a player that this front office said no to multiple times. Just like they did. So, and that's, it is what it is. So, I mean, when we get to it, like if you're going to do that and you're going to go get a John Collins who has been on the trade block for the last 5 years, wherever he's at, then you don't want to accumulate all of the players that everybody else is trying to trade. But that's just me.
So you said Cam Johnson makes you feel a little bit better about this move, but there really isn't a move out there that makes you comfortable with where the direction of the franchise is going with Zach LaVine on the roster.
Well, I mean, you have to add length and athleticism. If you don't, he's going to be in a worse situation than Fox was, because Fox is a better defender. In my opinion, I think the stats bore it out too that Fox is just a better defender. I mean, there are other things this team needs. Yeah. They need another scorer off the bench. They need other things, but realistically, they just need quality depth, and it's something that's like sort of beat up this. It's beat up this team the last year and a half that they just don't have the depth. No,
Brendan.
Brenden?
Sorry, I was scared to talk if I was going to be cutting out. But no, I mean,
you're
I
back.
agree. I think that the long-term projection of the team is more so my concern. Like I said, I think they're going to be a very entertaining and competitive regular season team. I just worry about the postseason where that perimeter creation becomes more important. De'Aaron and Zach LaVine both only have one playoff series, and De'Aaron played a lot better in that series for what it's worth. Take it for what you will. Small sample size on both sides, obviously. But I think that De'Aaron's game is made well for the postseason, and I wonder more so about Zach's side and of course all those other things that you guys laid out: defense, length, and what even is the long term? Like, is this front office going to be here after this season? Is Doug Christie going to remain the head coach? And sure, those questions already existed with De'Aaron Fox on this team, but I think it's not the easiest thing to try to talk yourself into, the most optimistic long term projection for this team.
I'll add to that part right there. I think by making the move for Zach, it does give you the opportunity to push forward with like, hey, this is who we are this year and probably who we are next year. And we might make some moves here on the peripheral. There might be like one more big move that just shocks people. But like at the same time, for the next, after we get past Thursday, like this is your group and there's not going to be this dark storm cloud hanging over you, which if you did keep De'Aaron and you weren't successful as a team, that storm cloud would have got darker and darker and darker as the season went on. And this season could have felt much worse. And it also could impact things like whether Doug Christie gets gets the full-time job next season and who's going to be who's going to be managing the front office, all of these things. It could get to a point where you're just looking at this as like a total spin out and a very unproductive like couple of months here in Sacramento where you're coasting in with a team that should be way better than it is, but that is heading for, another non-playoff season. So at least you have that going for you where you're pushing forward with a new look and a new rebranding and, some time here to let some of these players get to know each other and see if they can find some sort of connection and, success.
How would you answer your own question, Sean?
I don't know, man. Like I know that this is a business. I know that, I don't feel what they got for De'Aaron Fox is adequate enough to hit the reset button based off of decisions you've already made with, with your franchise. And that's why I talk about having some of these contracts already lined up. Like, are you now just in your mind, Brenden, like what's that look like? You trade Fox. This is the package that you have. Obviously bringing back Zach LaVine. I think if you didn't have, I think in your perfect world scenario, you wouldn't have Zach LaVine coming back. Right. Maybe it's more younger players and picks, but ultimately that didn't happen. And who's to say that could have happened without Zach LaVine? But I think just having to deal with what the reality is, and this is what you have. At that point, do you not make the trade? Do you?
No, I think given circumstances, like they came out okay. It was a complicated situation, and it's not as simple as front offices are just allowed to go in whatever direction they want all the time, obviously. So yeah, I mean, circumstances considered, I think they came out okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Brenden, when you talked about like, if this is a path you're going to go where you're going to try to cling to whatever you have going right now, this isn't a horrible path. I mean, choosing LaVine over and moving Fox and getting assets, it's not the worst path you could have done because there aren't a lot of players that were available that can put up 24 points a night and average 4.5 assists and 4.5 rebounds and all that stuff. Again, a great shooter. Like fundamentally on offense, he should fit in perfectly with Domas and with DeMar and with Malik. I do worry about a little bit of over dribbling and stuff like that, but there is another path. And I think that's where Sean was pointing to. And the other path was to not take back, 195 million, 98 million after this year that you owe Zach LaVine. That's a lot of money.
And I think too, and this is only, I think Vivek, Ranadive, and Monty are the only ones that can really answer this question. But I think in the decision not to go forward with De'Aaron Fox, it's a little like DeMarcus Cousins, but in a different way. You ultimately decided you weren't going to. I don't know when that happened, but at some point you were saying we're not going to pay that money of what a max contract would be for De'Aaron Fox, and so you've chose not to invest in that type of player going forward. And again, I think you have some stability right now, and in terms of long-term contracts and their pieces, and see how they gel. But I think there's some flexibility. I think there's some flexibility. I think there's things to do, and I think ultimately, as much as there is a desire to improve this roster for this season, it's always the long game, right? Like it's always it's never a complete product. So
yeah, I think for a little bit, for me, you get to a point where, again, De'Aaron has 1 year left on a deal, and, Zach has 2 after this year, right? So you got to this point where you couldn't do whatever it was that anyone is asking you to do. You didn't have the assets to do it. Now, the path to not have assets, it's on nobody but them. Like we can go through every transaction, and I can tell you how they squandered 7 second-round picks in the matter of like a year, and on things that didn't help you, like pretty much at all, right? But then we have all these deals that get done with quality players in the NBA that the Kings could have used that got acquired for 2 second-round picks or 3 second-round picks, and the Kings they just don't have those assets. And the reason they don't have those assets is because they made mistakes and paid to get out of those mistakes with second-round picks. This perpetual cycle of just burning second-round picks. And now they loaded up. They got a whole bunch of them in this
7
transaction. They do. They've got a ton in this transaction, but it's like,
if you remember, by the way, I said just a few weeks ago, you don't have second-round picks until you do, and it's very easy to acquire them. They just got a bunch of them.
Oh, yeah, very easy. You just have to trade your best player,
your franchise player.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it costs you so much to do it. So again, I guess like if you're looking at what they're doing, like they still have to address the same exact thing that Fox begs them to do. And that's it. Like if you're not going to address that, if you're not going to go get the 6'8", 6'9" guys that everybody else seems to be able to go get, then you're probably in the wrong profession. Like just in all honesty, like if you can't go get the basics that your team needs to compete with the best teams in the league, the league shifted. This is where they went. They went to a whole bunch of multi-positional 6'7" to 6'9", long wingspan, 3-and-D guys that can shut somebody down. And if you can't keep up with that, then I don't know. Like you got like one of them on your roster who's a number 4 pick. The other one on your roster was undrafted this year and 6'8", 6'9", Isaac Jones, who I like will enjoy watching the journey of his career, but still he's an undrafted player. Like you have to go out and get players who are ready to play today. You can't do things like go out and draft a guy with a 13th overall pick who's out for 6 to 8 months and doesn't play until, January, and is still having a rough go because he hasn't played, because he didn't get a training camp or anything else. It's just
another guard.
Who's another guard?
By the way, Mitch with an absolute banger of a comment right there. That's a good reference right there. I don't know that I agree with it, but the Monty is Jack Lemmon and Glengarry Glen Ross. Phenomenal movie. If you haven't seen it, the leads are bad.
Yeah, the leads are bad. Sweet. Okay. Let's get to final thoughts.
Don't we have people that want to talk? We got
a lot of people in here. We have like almost 700 people. If you guys don't mind, hit the thumbs up. And of course, it's not inflated by Twitter numbers. Those are 700 people in the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel, do all that good stuff. That would really help us. Joe Seward, you said be patient, Ham. Dude, like we've been preaching patience for 14 years here, man. Like the patience has gone out the window. And like you just bombed out and fired your coach midway through the season and traded your best player. Like there's no more time for patience. Like sorry. Let's see. Do you guys see the chat? Can you pull things up in the chat?
I wish I could. No, they don't let me. I mean, unless I'm doing it wrong. Here,
you just hover over and it says show.
Oh no, it doesn't.
No, I don't think we can.
I don't have no admin permission on my end.
Oh, you guys are, just my bad.
Just a guest.
I will show. I will not be on the Insiders tomorrow. I will be at the press conference. I'll show up on the Insiders, but I won't be there from start to finish. I think Jesse's going to show up. Let's see.
Someone asked me about Big Shaq asked me about my new car. Love the car.
How's that going?
3 days after I got it, it got keyed. So F you, person that keyed my car.
Where at?
No, I don't have any crazy X's. In fact, they wouldn't have even known if I had a car that quickly. But yeah, people are awful. And I felt like I was John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction's a movie by Quentin Tarantino. Brendan, you should probably see that movie.
I've seen portions.
Yeah, that sucked.
Like what?
Yeah, are we doing it? See, I think we haven't done an off the beat.
An off the record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour. We have done it in a long time.
Because
we'll do one.
I don't want to do virtual. I want to meet people.
You keep saying that, and then I say, hey, let's do an off the record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour, and then neither one of you show up.
I don't want to do virtual.
But then I go to do the virtual ones, and you guys aren't there, and then it's me asking questions for an hour and a half.
Yeah, but what I just say, I don't want to do the virtual. We should go and do one someplace.
I'm with you.
To be all that. Yeah,
we will. Crazy. You also live in Sacramento, and I don't. So why don't you set that up, Sean?
You live in Nevada. Is it snowing where you are right now?
No, but it's cold and raining like crazy. Let's see. Do we have any serious questions that we'll take and we'll answer? We need to talk to your front
Someone
office.
asked me if I have hope. I have hope. Why wouldn't you have hope?
Yeah.
James doesn't have hope. And neither does Brendan. It sounds like who froze again. But
I'm good now. Oh, did Brendan? Yeah,
I think he's drooling.
Good now. Yeah, I'm good with our friend. He
Look
can
at that.
No longer
That's
be
a
here.
hopeless face right there. He has no hope in that face.
Yeah. So I would like to do a live Kings Beat. We will. Well, I don't want to do the show.
No, it doesn't have to be live. Just show up.
Yeah. We'll do a meet up. How about that?
It doesn't have to be a goddamn show.
We'll do that for sure.
You want off the record? That's where you get me off the record.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, our off the records usually there's some good stuff in there. Also,
Brendan looks so worried right now. I feel like
I think Brendan has been held hostage.
Yeah, hold up a newspaper.
But Brendan, blink your eyes if you're okay. Blink your eyes.
Look what he did. He messed up our.
He did mess up everything.
Format.
You messed up everything there. Oh, now we got to switch, and then he'll come back. And we'll have to switch.
What the hell?
Yeah, look at that. That happened quick.
The presser will be streamed tomorrow. Co or CO, I don't know which to call you. It will be on fox40.com and on probably their YouTube channel. I don't know, something like that. I'm sure the Kings.com will have it as well, but yes, it will be streamed.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've lost Brendan here on the stream. He just, I think he moved. Oh no, he moved this weekend. But for some reason, his Wi-Fi where he's at is not doing all that well. Let me see. Do we have any questions that we need to take here? Sean, Brennan's back.
Just keep him out. No one's
just
listening.
Keep him out. I did ban the one guy. I just banned his ass.
I don't ban anyone, man. I really don't. Let him speak to me. Free speech.
He just kept
Twitter,
saying the same thing. Just again
I get
and
some
again.
evil. I get some evil shit, and I never ban him. I just let him go.
Yeah,
I might mute. Maybe mute is better.
There you go. There you go. Let's just quickly. What are your percentages that they get another deal done? At least one. Sean, you're thinking two. I think at least one deal they get done. No question. I don't know what that deal will be like. There's a bunch of things floating around here, but if they're, what are your guys' percentages?
I mean, for me, at least one, very, very high. I mean, I think this team has to. They know that they've got some figuring out to do. And again, I mean, moves can be somebody was waived, somebody that's, you've got a whole treasure trove of exceptions. I mean, it may not be the biggest move, but yes, I do think they're going to make multiple moves.
Okay. So high.
Yes. No,
80%?
Sure. I mean, it's things I was told. So, at least
but
one.
Trusting that they'll get something done.
I'm expecting 2 moves. Let's just say that.
Oh, okay. 2 moves. And Sean will not tell us what those moves are. Will you tell us what they rhyme with, Sean?
No, it's irresponsible.
Sean said it. Buddy Hield's coming back to
Told you I
Sacramento.
was expecting. If I'm wrong, it doesn't mean I said it would happen. I said I'm expecting 2 moves.
Okay, what do you got there, Brenden?
Yeah, I'm not.
Oh, Brenden.
Poor guy.
Brendan's pulling a James tonight.
This
Jim
is a better look for him, though.
I did not get your question, Jim. If you ask me again, just do. Oh, this is a good question. We should just put that question right over Brendan's face since he's frozen again. What would the Kings have to? What would the Kings have to do to make the trade worth it, or what would Zach LaVine have to do? I don't know. What would Zach LaVine have to do to make this trade worth it? I think just fit in. Like show that he can be a team defender and at least help out. All that stuff. And kind of be the scorer that he was before. That he has been. Because if he does exactly what he did for the Bulls this year, where he's shooting over 50% from the field and 44% from 3, like I think he does fit in seamlessly in the offensive end. I do have concerns, and to be fair to Zach, it's not just Zach as a defensive player himself; it's the backcourt of Zach and Malik Monk. Like they're just not like league average or above defenders, and that's tough.
Joe Seward thinks I like Limp Bizkit. I do like the Behind Blue Eyes song, but I didn't really care for Limp Bizkit too much.
Okay. Are they
but
local?
I didn't hate him. No.
Oh, okay.
Thinking of Papa Roach maybe, or Deftones,
Yeah,
or
there's a whole bunch of
Cake,
them.
or Dance Gavin Dance.
Yeah,
those guys?
yeah, one of those. Yep.
Okay. Oleander maybe.
No,
Tesla. I know all these. I know all the.
Oh yeah,
bands.
Tesla. Yeah. We'll answer this one too. If you found one to pick one position to make better, what would it be, Sean?
Well, yeah, center, rim protector. Actually, no. Let me. I'd say a stretch 4, but maybe one that's capable of being a rim protector. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, I know all these people are wanting me to say players. By the way, can I say I just helped our situation. Give us back. There we go. I told Brenden to use his hotspot, and he goes, "Oh yeah, good idea."
Hi, Brenden.
So it didn't work. It froze. It didn't work.
He looks so concerned. Oh, he's back.
Oh, he's back.
Yes.
Dude, I have no clue what's happening. I have
You
no
have
clue
no clue what's happening.
I just moved. I don't know what's happening.
That's funny.
No, I mean, so for example, there's things that kind of irritate me sometimes where it's like, well, Zach LaVine can't go with DeRozan because we know what that looked like before. It's like, well, okay, but it doesn't mean that's going to exist in Sacramento with the different pieces around them. I'll give you another example. Like if you were to reteam Miles Turner and Domantas Sabonis, like to me, yeah, Miles Turner does exactly what you kind of need on this team. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be the move that you go and get, but people who might see that, oh, we saw that in Indiana, it didn't work. It's like, no, that was a completely different team. Having that in Sacramento with the different pieces that are around them, could be a different story. So sometimes I just don't like people who just kind of wipe their hands clean of what they've seen prior in a different situation. So,
okay. If you were, let's play this game. If you are a betting man, is Trey Lyles on the team after Thursday?
I'd say he's the most likely to have been moved by the deadline.
Okay.
Apparently, Sean's not a betting man or trying to not act like one.
Yeah, I don't know. If
I would bet no
percentage on it, but
hard answer.
Okay.
I think he's the obvious matching. I think he's the obvious matching salary remaining on this team that you just try to move with in deals as you try to get things done here.
Can I give you guys a hypothetical of a conversation I had? Again, not
You had a hypothetical conversation, or you had a conversation and now you're going to give us a hypothetical of that conversation.
That came up in that conversation, right? Yeah. No. Okay. That's a better way to put it, James.
Okay.
What would you have felt about like Chris Middleton?
Oof. Man, that's tough.
And again, I mean, there's a report out there with them in Washington being close, possible third trade there. Kyle Kuzma probably being a piece that would be heading back Milwaukee's way if that was to happen. I'm not saying that Middleton is coming here or anything like that, but obviously, you've talked about Pat Connaughton. Bobby Portis is obviously something that would answer a need on Sacramento. I'm just saying from a Sacramento standpoint, let's say, you use something like a DeRozan and a Trey Lyles in that regard. Like, does that make you? I personally feel, maybe the fit might be a little bit better at that point, but I honestly feel Chris Middleton is rather washed and wouldn't expect to see that in Sacramento. But just I've had people push back on that, so I'm just curious about that.
Brenden?
It might be the first time we've used the word wash since I called HB washed way too early.
Oh man.
So would you agree with me though?
I think I would. I mean, yeah, when Chris Middleton was himself and healthy before all this, it's beautiful. It makes a ton of sense. Now it's tough. And DeRozan still does bring a lot to this team, especially without De'Aaron. Like, the question of, who's the closer? It's DeMar DeRozan. And like, sure, that doesn't mean Malik Monk can't factor in their other guys hit shots and stuff, but like DeMar's role, I think, becomes more clear on this team now, even more so with De'Aaron out of here. So I don't know. It crossed my mind with like the whole LaVine or the Kuzma Middleton idea thrown out there and needing a third team, but I don't know. I think that they're trying a lot of different things because this is a tricky line to toe here, trying to remain competitive, moving on from a guy like this.
Yeah, so Middleton is owed $31.7 million this year, $34 million next year on a player option. I'm going to guess there's a high likelihood of him picking up that player option unless he wants to waive it and go play, like sign. But even if he signed somewhere else, it'd be like a 2-year deal and he make less than that. I would assume so. I am not going to. I don't think I would do the Middleton deal. And the problem I would have right now with the Middleton deal, I'd feel more comfortable getting Middleton with Fox than I would with LaVine. Just because,
really,
because I think
he can't run for shit. So I couldn't see that happening with De'Aaron Fox. Like I still think there's a desire that they want to play fast, but that kind of changes things when you bring in Middleton, who doesn't seem to be. He's kind of slow at this point.
Yeah, but it's not that. That's not the reason. I mean, the reason I would prefer middle. I mean, I don't want two players with major injury histories that are one making $34 million and one making $46 million. Like tying up $80 million next season with two injury risk players is pretty bold. And I think one of the reasons why the Kings have been so successful, even though they haven't, they won playoff run and like really close to playoff run the last 2 years, a lot of it was the fact that their lack of depth was hidden by the fact that they didn't miss games. And that's because they don't have a bunch of players on their roster that are injury risk type players. Now, I would take Bobby Portis all day long. If they want to give up Bobby Portis and his $13 million salary and that deal and give you something back as well, because they're so far over the luxury tax, and you do that, you can absorb Bobby Portis's salary and stay under the hard cap. You can even do something like in a trade like that where you make them take back a minimum scale player and just free up some money. But yeah, I would definitely listen in that situation. Yes. No. Did we have other hypotheticals?
I like in the chat where I always see Jonathan Isaac come up, and I'm reminded of my former coworker Eric Rucker, who now works down in Fresno, because he absolutely has the strongest man crush on Jonathan Isaac
as a player.
And it was Kevin Durant in the chat that brought that up, by the way.
You know, the funny thing is that every time we bring up Jonathan Isaac, and it's like, hey, you don't want Jonathan Isaac. He's always hurt. Then the Kings play Orlando tomorrow. Jonathan Isaac will be unstoppable and look like a genius, and everyone will be like, look, he's so good. And it's like, yeah, but he's played in 45 games this season, which is a mild miracle for him. It's actually a major miracle for him. But he's averaging 6.2 points and 3 rebounds per game. I mean, this is not like, again, Jonathan Isaac. He just doesn't play, and so tough. Anyway.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
I think some of my favorite back-to-back comments here. Gary asked if we could see Sean's hat collection, and as somebody that has seen Sean's hat collection, it's maybe one of my favorite things of all time.
This guy gave me shit for bringing like 4 hats to Vegas for summer league.
Sean, it's not 4 hats.
Hell down there.
It's 4.
I can't wash my hats in Vegas,
hats.
man.
It's 4 of those hats in different colors. It's the same hat in different colors. It's not the fact. It's the Hurley hat specifically.
The Hurley hats.
It's your thing.
There you go.
They have a thing usually.
Thanks, man.
That's
Can I tell you
hilarious.
guys did I tell you I went to a concert oh, thank God. It wasn't just the Timberlake concert the previous month, but earlier in the month, I should say. Well, I
Humble
guess
brag.
January.
Go ahead.
No, but Brendan's a Bay Area kid. Do you know who? Well, I guess they're an LA band, but a little tie to San Jose. Do you know Foster the People?
I do. I didn't know they had. I didn't even know they were West Coast at all.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, yeah, they're LA for sure. But yeah, do you like them? Do you not like them? I went and saw them in
I
Oakland.
just know of them, and I'm sure a couple songs once they started, I'd be aware of them. But that's the extent of it.
James, no,
I don't know them. No.
Okay.
No, we keep having bands come through and play in the studio, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, Dick. What's going on there?
Well, because they're not like giant mainstream guys. Like the one time, like Teddy Swims came through before Teddy Swims was huge.
Yeah, I know him and his wife. I should have
called you
girlfriend. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Sean, you're a mainstream guy, man.
Yeah. There are other people that have come through, and I have no idea. Yeah, Tyler, I will be on the Insiders around the press conference, but I will be at the studio. I will be at the arena doing the press conference.
It's perfect timing for you, huh? They're like, we'll put one press conference at the beginning of a show and one at the end.
It's perfect if the Kings would have said yes to me being able to use a room at Golden One to do my radio hit for 2 hours.
I'd tell you to kick rocks.
There's all kinds of quiet rooms in that building that they could, but it's okay. Yeah.
Did you see this name, Charismatic Enigma? What a great name.
Yeah, it's Matt.
Asking me if I'm going. Oh, Matt who? George?
Well, no. His name is Matt, though. Charismatic.
Oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
Cool. No, I'm not going to Warped Tour in Long Beach this summer.
Wait, what do we like?
I don't even know if Sean is actually getting these questions.
No,
he's just making up his own questions so he can talk about whatever.
Our friends at Dusimo are here. Jonathan Isaac was pardoned, right? I don't even know what you're talking about.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh no.
Let that sink in.
We're not gonna go there. Wow, Deuce and Mo. I wonder which one of you. Yeah. Huh. And let's see. Do you guys think from Bryce? Do you guys think the Kings will use their 17 million TPE or no? They can't use it all, just so you know, unless they make other trades to free up other salary. They can't use the whole thing on a $17 million player. I would and I know I'm not like, this is not reporting. If I were the Kings, I would call the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are like, I want to say 30 million over the second apron and are going to pay so much in luxury tax. It's ridiculous. I would at least call them and see if there's any way they would take 2 first-round picks for Naz Reid and a trade exception and that TPE. I don't think you're going to get him out of there, but he has a player option for next year, so he can leave, and I certainly would at least call, because that right there, you saw what he can do to a team and how well he would fit next to Sabonis. Yeah, he's a baller.
I did hear back when he was in free agency that the Kings were interested, at least to an extent there.
I think they were, but he signed before free agency even started.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's get back to this really quick before we get out of here. Is DeMar DeRozan on this team after Thursday?
Oh, God. I'll go yes there. Yeah. I'll stick with a yes.
Why don't you go with that, James? Why don't you answer that question first?
I'm going to say 50-50. Unfortunately, like contract-wise, there are very few ways for the Kings to get up to 22 or 25 or 26 million. Very few ways, or 36 million. There are very few ways to do that without DeMar DeRozan being included. So my first thought would be, if they're going to take a big swing, that would be where you go.
Who says it has to be a big swing, though?
Well, I mean, I think
Here's the thing.
big earth swing. Go ahead.
You just traded for LaVine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't you kind of want to make him happy with, at least initially, when he's here? Domas too, for that matter. I don't know if you've seen the comments Domantas Sabonis had made in the Sacramento Bee to our guy Jason Anderson the other day, or really last night. If think of that locker room, like, and obviously it would have to be a pretty nice piece coming back if you're doing that, but like if you move DeRozan, to me that just kind of maybe kills a little bit of that chemistry that they have for this year. I mean, beyond this year, who knows? And again, I know sometimes they have to think that way, but that would seem odd to me.
Okay. JP asked the question. Keegan moved? What I don't think Keegan's moved by. I don't think they move off of Keegan. But
No.
That's just my own personal. Like, I haven't heard anything that involved his name yet. But that doesn't mean that there aren't things that do involve his name. But there's also like a lot of leaks coming out of this thing right now. So I don't know. Sean's looking at his phone. He's not going to answer the question.
What? Sorry. I'm sorry.
Keegan.
You're asking
Keegan.
Brendan.
Well, no,
I mean, you guys know my stance. Nobody is untouchable.
Okay.
I mean, you just traded De'Aaron Fox. So
I'm not asking if you would trade him. I'm saying, do you think he'll be here on after Thursday?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do.
I do too.
Keegan Murray would be here. Are we gonna do this for the whole fucking roster? What are we doing?
No, because we can't do it for the whole roster. Well, I'll ask one more. How about that? Is Devin Carter member of the Sacramento Kings after Thursday?
I would bet that he is.
Okay.
Yeah, another one that feels like a little bit of a coin flip. I mean, just when you're looking at, I guess now you have more draft capital to float around in these deals as well. I think before you had that, it was easier for, Devin Carter to be one of those pieces to entice something. So I think that the young guys that you have, specifically Devin and Keegan, on still rookie deals, and the player control that comes with that makes them extremely valuable to the Kings that, don't have very many of those guys. So obviously you would try to keep them, but I think definitely more likely that Devin would be moved than Keegan. But yeah.
All right.
Carter to me feels like it would be one of those existing moves that, not moves, but talks that they've had in recent months. If you go back to, say, Cam Johnson, for example, any flirtation that they may have had with him. But I wonder if now, if you have draft capital, if that takes Carter off the table, or, if you're pairing him with maybe an unprotected late first round pick, like you just got with San Antonio, or even the what's the other one I'm forgetting?
Timberwolves.
The Minnesota one, if that changes things. And, if you paired him and one of those picks, maybe that changes some calculus, but I don't think the math adds up still, right?
No, I mean, you need a second and maybe even a third team to make a trade work when it comes to Cam Johnson, or it comes to a couple other players, especially like John Collins. It would take like additional pieces.
And reportedly, at least for somebody like Cam Johnson, who's been just bandied about for forever now at this point, if they're looking for 2 first-round picks, and let's say you have Carter, who's a first-round pick, that's really 3 at that point, right? So it's. Is that too rich for your blood? Like it would be for me. It's not something I'd be looking at doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, look, any move you're going to make from here on out, it's going to hurt. You don't have any players. Like again, when you trade Kevin Huerter, I know it's a good thing to move off Kevin Huerter's money, the $16.8 million and $18 million next year. That's big. Like the salary cap looks a lot better for the Kings next year because again, Fox would have gone up to $37 million, and LaVine goes up to 46, so that's $9 million more. But you're dropping $9 million from Kevin Huerter's salary, and you're also going to lose another $8 million from Trey Lyles, who's an unrestricted free agent this summer. So you will have some sort of flexibility back. All right, let's wrap this thing up. We've been going for like, oh my gosh, we're approaching 2 hours.
Well, you know what? The people deserve it. We don't do this very often anymore.
What in the Sam hell? We do it once a week, Sean.
James?
Once a week.
We were a two a week podcast at one point.
We were, but that was a long time ago. And then all of us have other jobs that we're all. It's my fault. I'm still available at 12 o'clock in the afternoon to go, or 1 o'clock in the afternoon to do podcasts all the time.
I am too. Usually.
No. Sometimes. Let's do final thoughts. What do you got, Brenden? Final thoughts.
Happy birthday to Malik Monk. Turns 27 today, and I think he's an interesting part of all this that's getting overlooked a little bit. He's the point guard of this team now, and I think that there's an interesting aspect of, is there more to his game if he's given more opportunity? I think obviously that was already taking place under Doug Christie here, but even more so as that starting point guard on this team. I think that he's been as good of a passer, if not maybe better than De'Aaron Fox throughout the course of this season. So interested to see how he looks, if there's another step that maybe could be taken there. But yeah, definitely a lot going on. Interested to see what goes on before Thursday, and fun doing these lives. Nice having a go and chatting here and interacting with all the other maniacs.
The peeps.
Yeah, it needed to happen. Yeah. I'm still down. We can keep this going if you wanted.
Jesus, Sean.
Give the people what they want.
Sean's going to start talking about concerts.
Sean's usually the guy of like, God,
because now you got shit to talk about. Like, this is before. It's like, oh, here we go. Kings beat the, whatever, and it drags on. My final thought. You know what? I think like just putting the basketball and journalistically all the the hat off and all that kind of stuff. Like, shout out, like, I don't care what people think about, whether he wanted to be here or not and all that. Like, I really enjoyed De'Aaron Fox, like, covering him these 8 years just as a guy, is somebody I always enjoyed interacting with. I kind of gave him a little shout out on my Instagram, which, by the way, if you don't follow me, you can check out some fun shit there. But man, like, he was just a fun dude, to always be around. He and I think have a very similar sense of humor, and I found him to be always a refreshing personality. And we share a birthday, so maybe that's why. I'm not into astrology or anything like that, but really solid people are born on December 20th. So yeah, I don't know. I am gonna miss him. I miss De'Aaron. DeMarcus Cousins when they left. You spend a lot of time around these guys, and so it always is. It's tough when they leave. Jordan McLaughlin, another guy who I got to know really well as the time he was here, didn't obviously play a whole lot, but was just always a fun guy to chat with. And shout out Kevin Huerter too, because I know he sure went through the good and the bad here in Sacramento. And from a human element, I think just. We didn't spend much time talking about him. Everyone knew he was kind of going to be not in the cards for the Kings' future. And I hope he can kind of find his happiness, find that stroke again, and see if anything can manifest in Chicago or anywhere else that might be. So, shout out all three of those guys. They were always really easy and fun to kind of deal with, and kind of wish we had more interactions.
Yeah, I really like Kevin Huerter. Like, there's a lot of jokes back and forth with us, like the good people out here in the chat always making fun of me and say I'm Kevin Huerter's dad.
Yeah,
just because we're both gingers. I did tell Kevin Huerter one time when he wore a bubblegum, like a pink sweater, that like, bro, us gingers, we can't do that. You cannot wear that color. That does not work. Look, I think Kevin's a good dude. I spent Jordan McLaughlin is one of the few guys, a lot like Sasha Vezenkov last year, that sits in the locker room in pregame, and we spent a lot of time just saying hello, talking. super good dude, and a basketball like savant. Like we would get into random conversations, or Michael, one of the media relations guys, would ask some random question. Jordan always knew the answer. He'd just pop off with the answer. He's like an encyclopedia when it comes to just basketball knowledge. He knows the game. He knows all the players. He knows the history of the game. And also, I think his wife is a very active person on social media. They just had their first baby a couple of weeks ago. Like very cool, like vibe around those guys. And so I hate to see him go. And then with Fox, like, look, Sean talked about it. Like when you cover a guy for almost 8 years, like we're around these guys all the time and you get to know them. And, I've met Rasay a ton of times, their kids, all that stuff. Like you're around them. De'Aaron's mom is absolutely amazing, going out to strikes, and her story is incredible with battling breast cancer, losing sisters to breast cancer. Like their whole story is cool and they're good people. And so I wish them luck in their new adventure in San Antonio, but like, this is the game. This is kind of what happens. So yeah, I'm with you there. And my other final thought, it's kind of a weird one, but like we talk about it on occasion. Like we had Scott Pollard on the podcast one time to talk about this, but I'm a huge Survivor fan. And Katie Christensen's husband is on Survivor starting February 26th. So Joe Hunter, he will be, I think, Joe the fire captain, who they're pinning him on. But I think that's kind of cool to see how that goes, and who the hell knows how it goes.
Fireman, right?
He's a fireman. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she announced it the other day that he's part of the cast. And if you go watch any of their their commercials for it, he's all over the commercials. So we'll see how he does.
Handsome man. Yeah, they're gonna put him
that
everywhere.
guy all over everything.
Yep. You mentioned real quickly, about Fox and his mom, Lorraine, who was just incredible. One of the coolest events I had been to, and I'm not trying to, as shameless as it was a minute ago, I'm not trying to really plug my Instagram this way, but I did share 2 videos in that post about that where I had him mic'd up, and I love his interaction with kids. And one of those, I think, actually it might have been both of those events actually were there were kids camps, but one of them especially was a tie where they were using mothers and kids, not just like a kids camp, but they were all, breast cancer survivors and, people who have overcome that type of adversity. And just what an incredibly unique event that was. And it was, I know people always remember some of the good that these people have done in the community, and De'Aaron Fox and Lorraine were right up there in some of the things they did. And that was such a unique event, and I loved it. And that post is fun for me. I was at a different station at the time, but watching him, I wouldn't say talk shit to kids, but meet them at their level and kind of treat them as equals was always a blast. And if you can find those videos, I put a little clip on there on the Instagram, but even if you go to YouTube and search that out, it's a lot of fun to see.
The one other thing I'll add about De'Aaron real quick is I think that he had a genuine love for the city of Sacramento, similarly to obviously DeMarcus did. And it's a little funny, like reading his goodbye. It's very much directed to the city and the fan base rather than the organization, which makes sense with how everything went down, obviously. But I think that there was a genuine love there for the city and a, desire to get it done here. And obviously it didn't end up transpiring that way. But, I even like, he's not a big city guy. I think Sacramento was actually pretty fitting for De'Aaron. I heard part of the reason that he likes San Antonio, obviously there's a lot of basketball reasons, was because it kind of reminded him of Sacramento as a city. So I think there was a lot of genuine, De'Aaron wanting to get it done here. It just obviously got to a point. So, going to be cool to see his eventual return. I think in March is when San Antonio comes to Golden One Center. It'd be interesting to see if he's available and playing in that one and sort of the return. But, I think it was genuine from De'Aaron's standpoint. You can go back to that What Players Tribune video he did in his second season, talking about wanting to turn it around, and obviously didn't end up playing out. And it'll be interesting to see what his long-term legacy looks like. But, I think he did a lot for Sacramento in general in 7.5 years of being here.
Yeah. Lastly, I want to ask you, Brenden, one question. You went through this with Tyrese, your first trade deadline, where you'd actually had like a weird buddy partnership here with Tyrese. It was different. How does this one feel different? This trade deadline in general, this trade in general.
This one was more predictable for sure. You know, I mean, just the week leading up to it, you could kind of feel writing on the wall. Even after Mike Brown was fired, it felt like an eventual exit was kind of inevitable. So definitely a difference there. But yeah, also just the two guys that, you know, from the perspective of our job, I think that you would dive into the most, key players on the team. And so resetting from that standpoint is a little different. And yeah, guys that I got to know a decent amount compared to, I think, some of the other players on the team, which again, somewhat the nature of it with them being some of the better guys out there. But it's a weird one. It's definitely not as surprising, but definitely feels like a reset in the same way.
All right.
We didn't talk about Luka at all. Luka in the AD trade, did we?
Oh, come
We
on,
didn't.
Sean. You're just trying
I
to
would
drag
love
this
to get
out.
to sleep though.
Sean, you just need to go out and drink. I don't know what you're doing. You're just trying to drag this thing out as long
We
as
have
you
a
can.
9:30 press conference.
I know
dude.
it's stream of consciousness because somebody mentioned I see it in the
You're just
in the chat,
lonely.
and I'm
Don't say that, Sean. You're just
good,
lonely.
bro.
You just want to hang out with us.
We done?
Well, we're done. Hey, thank you for everybody who's in here. We still have 621 people in the stream. If you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel while you're here. All of those things help. This is a 2-hour and almost 11-minute show, and we do have to do a whole lot more talking tomorrow. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. We are, of course, a Blue Wire podcast brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Go to Underdog. Make sure to use the keyword Kings Beat, all one word, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. I think that's the first. All kinds of games this weekend. Should be crazy. So for Box 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Boy, I blew that one completely. I am James Ham, your Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 in the Kings Beat. We'll see you tomorrow on all kinds of platforms because that press conference is going to be everywhere.